Okay, this is it, the grand finale. We are leaving Git Demo behind. Thank you for your service, Git Demo. But where we're going, you can't follow. You want to go back over to your fork of creating with Git, and if you've been using the honkit server to look at the text, you're going to have to Control C to stop it, because we are going to be doing some interesting stuff with it. One of the things I'm really passionate about is good documentation, and documentation can be its own project, its own repository. And I don't just mean documentation for code. It could be documentation for a set of institutional practices or policies. And one of the things that drives me crazy is when that documentation is marooned or trapped inside of content management systems that nobody likes using. One of the beautiful things about Git and Markdown is that it's just text. It's just plain text, and it can be moved wherever you want. And then with a little bit of additional open source help, it can become a beautiful set of searchable information, just like what we've done with our textbook here. All of this was just created with plain text and a little bit of JavaScript. GitHub does have a wiki option for maintaining documentation on a repo, but I do not like it. It doesn't allow us to do versioning particularly well. It doesn't allow change management particularly well. But what we've described already with the native Git features does, which is why I'm such a strong proponent of using the Git workflow for documentation of this kind. One feature that GitHub does have, however, that will be super helpful is the ability to publish websites. You can create a static website out of the contents of your Git repo if it's configured correctly. If you go to your settings page for your repo and go to Pages, you'll see what I'm talking about here. There are two options in GitHub to create a GitHub Pages setup. One is deploy from a branch, which is what we're going to do, and the other is GitHub Actions, which is actually what I prefer most of the time, but because GitHub Actions are outside the scope of this course, we're going to do it the more traditional way via deploying from a branch. Now, we don't have a branch just yet, so we have to make one. We're going to git switch -c pages to create the pages branch, and we'll send that right up to GitHub. Git push -u origin pages. Now, we're not quite done with the pages branch in order to get it ready for publishing. A couple of things to think about. First, we have to build the website. When we run npx honkit serve, you'll notice that there's this _book folder that gets generated. And that is a default for honkit. As a matter of fact, not only is it a default, we're specifically ignoring that folder. We haven't talked about it, but Git has an optional file called git ignore that tells Git what files to never bother tracking. We have 3 entries, one for Vim temp files, one for the node modules folder, which is gigantic and we never want to deal with, and one for the _book folder, which is where honkit does its building. And that's fine most of the time, but we do have to make some different accommodations for building the website. If we run npx honkit build, all of that will get built into the same _book folder, which we've told Git to ignore. So this is a little bit annoying because not only do we need to track wherever the website is going to live, where those files are going to get built, but GitHub doesn't give us a lot of options. If we choose the pages branch, we only have 2 options for where to look for the contents. We can only look in the root of the repo, which is not where our index.html is, or the docs folder, which doesn't exist. Remember, honkit puts the index.html in the _book folder, which we can't use. We're ignoring it anyway, but even if we weren't, we can't use it. We have to use this docs folder. We need a build script. Since we're not here to talk about Bash, we're going to create this and then talk about what it does. let's vim build.sh. And yes, we're doing this on the pages branch because main doesn't need the build script, but pages does. All right, let's walk through this line by line. It's a bash script. The first thing is if the docs folder doesn't exist, then we're going to make it. We run npx honkit build. Then we're going to copy the contents of the book folder to the docs folder. Then we add the docs folder, and then we commit, and we create a rebuild commit with the current date stamp. So it's a really easy timestamp thing. And then we push. All in one move. Let's go ahead and save that out. We will make it executable. And let's add build.sh, add the build script. And then, of course, let's run the thing with /build.sh, which should rebuild and then push our changes. While we're at it, let's click Save over here for GitHub Pages. Everything looks good. And in a minute or two, you should be able to see on GitHub Pages that your site is live. If we look at the Pages branch, you'll see that there is a docs folder that has exactly what we want inside of it. If you look closely, you'll see this gold dot as it's building, and this is under the hood what GitHub is doing to make sure that your pages are getting published. Once these finish, then your page will be live. And there it is. You can see that this got published to my account name, .github.io/creatingwithgit. So this is my own copy of the text. And so this is a starting point. And that does it for our publishing unit. In the last lesson, I just want to talk about your exhibition of mastery, what I'd like you to do to practice and then demonstrate your understanding of these skills.